if we could measure well-being, it's like, yeah, that's a big problem, Sam. Like, we have measures of well-being, and they're terrible.
Yeah.
Like, they are. If
No, I'm agreeing. I
okay.
don't think but it's not a problem for my thesis. We don't have measures for anything we care about, really.
Yeah, but I mean, if your thesis is that if we had the measures of well-being that were appropriate, we could use them in a positive way, and the response is, but we don't have those measures, it's like, okay, well, then what do we do?
Oh, no, we have measures. I mean, this conversation is a measure. I don't like that. That's a measure, right? You step on my toe and I say, ow. That's a measure. Don't do that again.
But that's not a measure of your well-being. It might be a measure of your trait neuroticism.
Well, it's a measure of.
But I mean that.
These are non-points.
No, but I mean this technically. Yeah. If you look at the well-being measures that we have, yes, they degenerate into measures of neuroticism.
No,
that's all they are.
But we don't have measures of certainty, of belief, of compassion, of joy. Any of these conscious states, we have neural correlates of some of them, but we don't have. There's no helmet I can put on you.
How do we use facts about them to orient ourselves in the world then?
Because we're doing that. We're doing this all the time.
You've got an instantaneous measure, though. You've got an instantaneous measure of well-being. We can all check with ourselves, see how we feel.
But it's possible to be wrong about that.
Right? Always, sure. Always wrong about it.
But it degrades as you get away from the individual's ability to check internally.
Even the internal thing isn't reliable, because
not
lots of times
reliable,
you're happy when you're doing things that are terrible
and
for
you
yourself.
could take a drug that would make you feel very good and would cause you to take apart your own life because it would.
You mean like cocaine, for example?
Right. It would destroy the motivational structure that gets you to do stuff of value that you're
right. So we can't use emotion, moment-to-moment emotion, as an indicator of well-being.
The instantaneous is not good, but you have a parallel problem. It looks to me like the exact mirror image, which is that you've got an integrative, long-term measure of well-being instantiated in an evolutionary belief system, but it's coming apart because we are living in circumstances that are less well mirrored. The present does not mirror the past, and therefore these truths, which you believe are timeless, are degrading rapidly.
That's that's exactly right, yes.
Okay, so what Sam is arguing is that the tools to pivot in order to improve our way of interacting, those are not the tools of long-standing tradition. Those are the tools of rational engagement.
Respect for that process is part of the long-standing tradition.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, but that's a big truth, man.
I agree.
That's a major league truth.
I agree.
And in fact, I would say the fundamental tradition, the most fundamental tradition of the West, says that respect for the process that updates moral judgment is the highest of all possible values. And that's also built into the tradition, strangely enough.
I agree it's built into the tradition, but I would argue that it is very likely to be compartmentalized. In other words, I was a little bit struck when you said that, what did you say about scaling? You said that
good reasons scale and bad reasons don't.
Isn't that the opposite of the truth?
No,
if you're calling these stories that give prescriptions for how to behave bad ideas, the point is those stories propagate very easily. So if we want to talk about the gun and whether it is loaded, the idea that the gun is definitely loaded, that scales really easily, right? You can pass that along in one sentence.
And the consequences of being wrong about a loaded gun also scale, right? So,
no.
Well,
if you want to talk to people about very small possibilities of very dire things happening, they trip over it. It's a hard thing to get. It's almost impossible for children to get it. So the point is, the one thing does scale, a story that says, yeah, every gun is loaded. It's a false story, but that one definitely scales. Yeah. The statistical reality of guns and the fact that they may indeed be unloaded, but you don't want to play around with the remote possibility that one day you'll get it wrong, right? That doesn't scale because it requires you to have experience with stuff that is not common.
Right. Well, so there are two things there. One, you bring up an ancillary but very important point, which is that moral progress here is often the result of moving from our story-driven, protagonist-driven intuitions to something far more quantified, right? So I mean, there's a classic, moral study done by Paul Slovic, who I'm sure you are aware of, where you tell people about one needy little girl in Africa, and you give her a name and show her picture, and what you elicit is the maximum altruistic, compassionate response from subjects. You go to another group of subjects, you tell them about the same little girl, give her the same name, but also tell them about her needy little brother, right, who has the same need, and their response diminishes, right? Just the addition of a single person diminishes the response. And this is a moral fallacy that we're all living out every day, because if you care about this one little girl, you should care at least as much about the fate of her and her brother. And when you add statistics to it...
No, you shouldn't, because
Well,
you'll
no,
exhaust
you
yourself.
should.
No, you shouldn't.
This is a
because
bug,
you'll
not a
exhaust-
feature.
Man, you'll exhaust yourself in the attempt.
No, because we need...
What, are you going to care for 100 people with the same intensity that you care for one?
This is what this software flaw gets us. It gets us people who will watch for hours a day with effortless and tear-stained compassion the saga of the little girl who fell down the well, but who will blithely turn the channel when they're hearing about a genocide that is raging and hundreds of thousands have already died.
Sam,
right?
listen, guys.
This is something we have to.
If you let the
we have
full
to
horror,
correct for this. No, I'm not talking about person. No, but you're misunderstanding me to great effect here. That I'm not saying that you should personally be overwhelmed by the death toll every day. I'm not saying that it's functional for you and I to each personally get up each morning and just drink deep of the full horror of all the bad luck that is spread.
No, maybe it is, but maybe we can't handle it.
But as societies, we need, when you're talking about how we spend our money, how we apportion foreign aid, the kinds of wars we fight or don't fight, the kinds of then we have to correct for what is in fact a moral illusion, which is we know that if we tell we tell one compelling story about a little girl, right, we could go to war over that, right, whereas we won't be motivated by a genocide. That's the kind of thing that moves whole societies now. And if you add to it the bogus religious sanctities, if we burned a Quran on this stage tonight, the rest of our lives would be spent in hiding, right? Because of how motivated people would be to address that pseudo problem.